I know.
Excuse me, I don't consent.
Uh-oh.
See
Bye-bye,
you later, Joe.
Joe. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 20 people here. That seems like more people than we have in the class. No, that's I think there are, I don't remember how many people are in the class now. I think there are actually 22 now that I think about it. Let me just take a quick look. It's only 12:59. I'm going to look at the class list. I hope that for you guys, this is a little bit of a relaxing break from chemistry, math, and physics classes. You know, listening to, yeah, I see Mitch nodding, listening to Kat Phillips talk about her day. We didn't go running today because Friday's our day off. Let's see. Class list.
So do you and Kat talk while you are running, or
She
is it
talks.
more like it? Oh, okay.
We talk nonstop the whole
Yeah.
time.
We do. It was kind of a joke because she's known as being a talker, but we talk nonstop. And these days, her daughters have been riding their bikes with us, and her older daughter is even more of a talker than her. So,
yeah, if that's possible.
Yeah. All right. There are 19 students in the class, and there are currently 21 people on. So that means we're missing one student. I might as well, unless anybody. Oh, right. Jess was going to be late. Oh, no, she's here. She's here. All right. Oh, wait. There you go. 22. I think that's everybody. Okay. Well, let's just assume that everybody is here. Sorry. Oh, Dr. Schenk had texted me. No, never mind. Somebody else had texted me. Let me turn this off anyway. Okay, so let me just look at my email real quick because I realized that I know. Oh, I see. Got it. Okay, so Dr. Schenk made it on. Okay, so welcome, y'all. Thank you so much for being here. I have invited Kat Phillips. You guys have seen the emails. You don't need me to go through everything again. But Kat Phillips is here to talk about her life as a trained scientist to some extent, or where she went with her science. And actually, Kat, why don't you just start when we start with, if you weren't planning on it, it's just talking about your education. I forgot to mention that one.
Yeah, sure.
And I'll let you go ahead. No, go ahead.
So I'll start from the beginning, because when I was y'all's age, I didn't think that I would be working at the high school that I went to when I grew up. There's no way I would have ever thought that. But so as early in my education, high school, did dual enrollment, went to gov school, finished my first year of college in high school, and then I went to UVA because it was cheap. Spent a year there in the environmental science program, and then went abroad for a whole year in England at the University of East Anglia. And they had a specialization in environmental science. So I got credit, and I know you guys are always in this boat. I got credit for all my environmental science work while I was there. The grades didn't transfer, but I got all the upper level credit, which was fantastic, and graduated from UVA in 3 years with it's an MA, but in environmental science. So that was kind of early on. And then thinking grad school, what do I do? What's my career choice? I decided, I was like, by the age of 25, I wanted to have my PhD. I still don't have it. I'm 44, so clearly that goal path kind of went astray. But I spent my year after graduating from UVA in Bermuda. And I had, and this is something I would recommend, I had made a really great advisor. My advisor, Jim Galloway at UVA, was on the board for the Bermuda Biological Station for Research. And so he would go down there and fly for meetings. I worked for him in the summer in his lab, cleaning glassware. And if those of you in chem and bio, lots of cleaning, of lots of dishwashing, but it got me in the door. And he wrote me a great recommendation. And so I spent my first year out of college working as a lab technician at the Bermuda Biological Station for research. It's crazy expensive there. The island is 1/2 mile wide and 26 mile long. And while I was there, I worked on dissolved organic nitrogen, dissolved organic phosphorus in seawater samples from all over, from the Indian Ocean, from all over the world. So I kind of got my foot dipped into oceanography. The problem, and this, you'll see this kind of theme comes along. My focus, I'm going to get my PhD. It was just a little landing spot for going on to grad school. But I started to get around the island. I started riding my bike a lot, and we would do station dives. We would scuba dive as a station once a week. So we'd go out to the outer reef, and it was fantastic. We'd tag turtles. We had a lot of experience collecting samples and experiencing that research aspect of things. But then I started to run every day to get in shape, and then I was riding my bike and swimming, and so I started to really like doing triathlons. In applying for grad school from Bermuda, I applied to Woods Hole. I applied to University of Washington and in Seattle, and I applied to University of Hawaii in Manoa, and got into all those programs. They, as a scientist, they pay you to go to grad school, which is awesome. They flew me out to all of those places, and I had to decide which place was I going. You meet your advisor, and that's really important to have a good relationship with the person you're going to be working with, because when you are a research slave, which is basically what you are, when you're doing all that research as a grad assistant, they make you do a lot of work, and you have to work with them. So you want to get along with them. But I went to Woods Hole. It was cold and rainy. I went to University of Washington. It was very cold and very rainy. I think I actually even caught a cold. And then they flew me out to Hawaii from Bermuda. And I had a fantastic time. I looked around, kind of thought, well, of course, why wouldn't I want to go to grad school here? So I went to grad school in Hawaii. And the school there is the School of Ocean and Earth Science and Technology. And my advisor, Barry Hubert, he worked on atmospheric chemistry, specifically bromide in the marine boundary layer. So as part of being accepted to the program and being there, I was there from 96 to 2000 for 4 years. I got to go sample. If you've ever seen that CO2 log of atmospheric CO2, it goes up and up and up and up. That's from Mauna Loa in Hawaii. Well, I would periodically, once a month, go out, and they have atmospheric towers, and we would go and we were taking aerosol samples, and I would help make sure all that stuff was working, which was really fun to be able to fly over from Oahu, which is where Honolulu is, over to the Big Island and do research there. I also got to ride my bike out and go out to Bellows Air Force Base, and then we had an atmospheric tower on the beach there as well. So while I felt like I was working and getting PhDs in Hawaii, took a long time because it's so much fun. I started training more and swimming at lunch and riding my bike and racing. And I found this thing called the Ironman triathlon. And I was like, ooh, that looks kind of fun. So when I was all but dissertation with my PhD, I quit school to become a professional triathlete. I figured I'm 25. Who cares about the PhD? I can always come back, but I'm only going to be young once. So I did 14 Ironmans. I did them all over the country. My first one was the one in Hawaii, which many of you guys probably have actually seen. The first one I watched was when I was in Bermuda, and I watched somebody watched it's the one that made everyone famous. Paulina B. Fraser is like crawling across, or Julie Moss was crawling across the finish line, and she's like passing. It was just like, you look at it going, oh my gosh, these women and these men are crazy. And I just had to be a part of it. So for those of you that don't know what the Ironman triathlon is, it's a 2.4 mile swim, 112-mile bike, and then a marathon, a 26.2 mile run, all at the same time. You have one day to do it. The cutoff is 17 hours. My first one I did was in Hawaii, and I was living in Hawaii then, but I went to Australia. I did the one in Canada. There's one went to Brazil and Switzerland, and I did a half in Wales. So I traveled everywhere. So from my age 25 to 30, I'm like, forget having a real job, forget having a family. I got married. I was married at 24. So my husband and I, he's a bicycle mechanic, which is important if you have a love of biking. And so we would travel and go to these races, and I worked at the running store. So Riverside Runners used to be in a house on Rivermont. And so my husband and I moved back from Hawaii so we could afford to live. I worked in the running store and trained. He worked at the bike shop, and we just kind of got on with things. At 30, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have a real job. What am I going to do? I don't have a 401k. I don't have a retirement. So I also was kind of getting burned out, wasn't really making a lot of money in triathlon, a couple thousand every once in a while in a race, but that doesn't pay the bills. So at 30, I started to teach. I applied for a job at New Vistas School, which is a private school here in Lynchburg. And I taught PE, biology, and health to, like, there's about 40 kids at the school. Lynchburg College offered a career switchers. So I had never done any teaching. I didn't have any education. If any of you guys are education majors or have friends that are, they have all these silly classes you have to take about classroom management. Well, Lynchburg College had a 6-week program where you could take these classes in a condensed version. And for older people like me at 30, I could become a teacher. So I did that. But of course, I couldn't stop my love of exercise and triathlon. And so I also started coaching at Easy Glass High School, which is where I went to high school as well. So I coached there for a year and then applied for the coaching position at Randolph. And Peter, Dr. Sheldon, had set up a running class and he was instrumental in getting that running. He had a running club, there was a running class, and that laid the foundation for having cross country and track at Randolph, which is pretty awesome. And so he had kind of gotten that all going. I applied for the head coach job, and I got it. So while I'm learning how to teach, I know how to coach. I started coaching, and I was the head coach for the men and women's cross country team at Randolph. And Dr. Sheldon was the assistant, which was really fun. So we coached for 5 years. And so I got married in 2000. My first child, and this is where it's all like a balance. My first child was born in 2009. So 10 years after we got married. Well, 2007 is when the track program, we kind of started that process. So initially, I would bring Rowena, my oldest, I would bring her with me to meets. She was 2 weeks old at our first cross country meet. We'd take the big buses and we go to all over the place. And so she would just come with me to practices. And we tried to do this nice balance of, okay, well, I'm working full time and I have a kid and coaching too. So it was definitely busy. And for those of you that are athletes, the cross country season is kind of condensed. It's a fall and a spring. It wasn't a full year commitment. So it just got crazy when, when we were in season. Um, After my first year teaching at the smaller school, I did start teaching earth science at Glass in 2005. So it's all kind of overlaps. So my teaching, I taught for earth science for 13 years until 2 years ago. And my coaching, when my second daughter was born, and Dr. Sheldon probably has some funny stories from our runs and me wanting to pull my hair out. My second child is she's very strong-willed. And so when she was born, she was not having me coaching and splitting my attention. So when she was born, that was when I retired from coaching. And that's when Bill Cooper stepped into the role at Randolph. So again, working full time, it's really tough to try to balance the family and the other things. So continuing with the exercising and the activity, we still started, it was important to run. And if you guys have seen Dr. Sheldon and I out on the road, we run all the time. He will joke that back when I first had my oldest, in 2009. If it kind of just looked like it was going to rain, I'd be like, sorry, Peter, I can't run. It's going to rain. So I'd totally bail on him all the time. We would push a single jogger with her, but I didn't like getting wet. Well, the second one came along and she would actually be calm in the buggy that we would push. And so you guys are kind of younger. So a lot of the staff around laughs because they remember us pushing a double jogger. I'm very hard headed. Initially, I would not let Dr. Sheldon push it. I'm like, it's my child. I had her. I'm going to have to push her. Finally, when the second one and the double jogger came along, I'm like, dude, if you want to run with me, you are going to have to help me push. So often I would push on the way out to Peakland Place that's a 5 mile loop. And then he would push on the way back. The funny thing is after my second child, when we're pushing those kids in the double jogger, I had my fastest marathon time. So I ran a 2:58 in Richmond, which is sub 7 minute mile for a marathon. And that's the fastest marathon I've ever done. It was working full time and pushing two kids in the stroller. And I'll tell you, like, if I wasn't pushing them, I don't think I would have been as fast. If there weren't gummy fruit snacks, we wouldn't have been able to run as long because there's a lot of times where I'd be like, girls, just eat this, be quiet. So, I mean, we would do 15 miles pushing them in the double stroller. So we were able to still continue that exercise, which is so important when you want to have that mental health component of life. In 2014, on January 1st, I decided I wanted to run every single day. That was going to be my goal. I didn't care about my times anymore. There's so much going on. And so to this day, I have run every single day since January 1st, 2014. So that's 14, 15, 16, 18, 19. I'm on week 7. And of course, when you're video conferencing, sometimes your children like to come in and say hello. I was down there. Jenny, go get Dad. So, and the work-life balance right now with COVID is very interesting because all these Zoom meetings, my position is no longer a classroom teacher. I'm an ITRT. So I'm the IT or the technology resource teacher. So I help all the teachers utilize technology. And so right now we're video conferencing, of course. We do PDs online, but even through all of this, I'm on the 7th year of running every single day straight. So I don't bail on Dr. Sheldon as much anymore, but we don't run as far. It's kind of hard to balance long 3-hour runs when you need to balance that work and family. You need to make a balance because otherwise you'll go crazy for sure. So I still get to use the technology and my science background, but what's fun is I work with all the teachers. And so while I used to just do earth science, and we've recruited a lot of great teachers from Randolph, Sarah Woodward and Jessica McIntosh, Mackenzie Garnett, we have a bunch of folks that have come to us at Easy Glass from Randolph. I like it that I don't just stick with my one content. I'm not just rocks and minerals anymore. I get to help them find neat ways to engage students. I get to show them how to use Google Earth to make virtual field trips. That's one of my jobs is ITRT, as I've written a couple grants, one for the VR goggles for the whole class. We have a whole class set that we can go from teacher to teacher. We've got some podcast kits, green screen. So I feel like I'm kind of like instead of just being like the mom in the classroom trying to keep kids and make sure they learn the stuff for the SOL, I get to be kind of the crazy aunt who comes in and is like, ooh, look at this cool stuff. Isn't science neat? Or wow, let's go to the Hagia Sophia and actually get into the building and learn about social studies this way. So I feel like I'm still able to touch content that I enjoy, but I don't have to do as much of the discipline and the things about teaching that's kind of not as fun as you know, teaching in a high school is a struggle because not all kids are interested in learning. So now my role is kind of more, again, as kind of the crazy aunt who pops in, does the neat things, and then I get to teach the teachers how to use the tool. And that has, sometimes working with adults is almost trickier than working with students, but it's good, and especially I've had some Zoom conferencing lately in the past, even few days, with people that I never thought would even figure out how to share a document in Google. So they're calling me and asking, "Hey, can we Zoom so you can teach me a few things?" And that's pretty cool. Um, I mean, I know you guys may have questions. I could go on and on, but I mean, questions, Dr. Sheldon, you want to send me in a direction, or does anybody have things they want to ask?
Well, actually,
Because I talk fast.
people may well have questions, and you guys should ask questions. But I would be curious. I'm not even sure I know what does, as an ITRT, what does your actual day look like from start to finish?
Yeah. Okay. So it depends on the division. Lynchburg City Schools, we are lucky because our high school has, and the middle school all have Chromebooks, so it's 1-to-1. So we have 9 ITRTs, but we have 18 schools. Last year, I was assigned to EC Glass High School and Bass Elementary School. So I would spend 1 week at EC Glass and 1 week at Bass. And then on Fridays, all the ITRTs come together and we would talk about things that we needed to get done. But so typically when I go to work, what I do is I'll go to Glass. It's really important to make connections with folks. And I know it's sort of funny, not like a used car salesman, but I'm kind of that frontline person who goes and, like, I stop by the office, say hi to everybody, check in, make sure everything's going. If they have something wrong with, like, their printer or um, like a hardware issue, I say, "Oh, great," because we actually have a technician. If you ask me to fix your printer, I'm gonna be like, "Let me Google it." I won't I won't know what to do. So but a lot of times I'm that sort of front face who goes around and talks to the secretaries, goes into guidance. And on my way in, I typically check with folks, see how they're going, how they're doing. Our library is where kids can bring their Chromebooks into, and they can bring them in and get them fixed. We swap them out. So I'll check in with the libraries. I pick up all the Chromebooks that are broken. Um, and then I take the broken Chromebooks and I take them to our technician, who we have a shared office. So then some ITRTs like to keep the door closed. I typically have the door open all the time. Kids will come in to see me. Teachers come in to see me. They can schedule appointments with me. So it just depends on how the day kind of is going. But so if I have the door open during class, during our class change, I actually will leave my room and stand out in the hall and say hi to students. Sometimes they'll ask me if they have a problem with their Chromebook. They'll pop in. But we try to be really vocal and visible. And if I have a project that I'm working on, like say I need to get the VR goggles set up for a theater class that wants to go to the Royal Shakespearean Company. I might shut the door and try to get things done. Sometimes I'll just plug in the set because we have this giant cart on wheels. So I might plug in the phones, wipe down the goggles, get the tablet ready, and then set it all up so then I can wheel it to the teacher. If a teacher needs help, say they want to do a Google Earth lesson and they're scared it's going to flop, they might say, "Hey, Kat, can you come in my class for Thursday, second period, and just make sure it's working?" So I might pop into someone's class and do that. If they want me to teach their students how to use Google Forms or Google Sheets or any of those, we are a Google school. I can go in and I actually teach the class. And sometimes the teacher, "Hey, this is how you do it. This is how you can use this." And so I give tutorials to the students, but I'll also have days where the whole day is blocked off in the library and teachers come to me and I do trainings as well. So it's kind of nice for like the ADHD person who doesn't like to sit still, and that's me. Every day is kind of whatever is on my calendar. If I'm not on my calendar, if there's nothing on my calendar, guarantee you by the end of the day, I will have still filled it with tons of things to do. We have a VTSS team, which is a team where we do positive behavior supports. And so I'm part of that team. So I help kind of crunch data, help them kind of look at like referrals. Are they by gender, by race, by grade? We try to look at some of that stuff, and I can help them with that kind of big data. My role used to be called a DART. That was data analysis resource teacher. We don't do quite as much data analysis, but I love the numbers and crunching that stuff. So, and also it's faster to do an ad hoc. I like to do those types of things where some teachers get scared. So I often help them with making data a little bit more meaningful for different groups in the building. So there's a ton of different things that like an ITRT would do. It's nice because as a classroom teacher, you're stuck in one room, you have to teach the same content every single day, it's the same thing. And I was the department chair, which was fun because I kind of helped the whole department, but I applied for this job instead of 10 months, it's 11, because I do get my toe in more classrooms and see more students, but I'm not stuck in one place. I can go to the bathroom whenever I want to. And if you are a teacher, you realize that going to the bathroom whenever you want is really nice because you can't do that. You can't leave the kids alone. So, typically at the end of the day, you think about the way a high school works, the kids are dismissed and they leave in the afternoon. People stop by and see how things go, how they're going. They might ask me questions. I am in charge of looking at everybody's grade books. So I have to make sure the teachers are grading correctly, actually putting in grades and doing that. So every quarter, that's one of my roles, is checking to make sure everyone has grades. There's no incompletes left at the end of the year, and that kind of thing. And with Lynchburg City, because there's Chromebooks, at the beginning of the year, we roll them out to them and then we have to collect them. This year, on the first day of school, we actually had Chromebooks in every single classroom for each kid already checked out to them, which was with 1,400 students. That was a monumental feat, and it was very busy up until the first day of school. Now we have this special little wrench in our spokes. And so everyone has Chromebooks. Now we have to figure out how at the end of the year, we're going to collect all those senior devices, how we're going to collect any of the other devices if we're just waiting till school again. So some of that stuff is kind of up in the air. But yeah, I mean, for me, who's always like, oh, squirrel, oh, wait, squirrel, oh, whoa, like it's kind of a fun job because there's always something going and something brewing. I found that my Google Calendar and Google Keep has been essential to help me like stay on top of things. I write little notes everywhere. And so trying to keep that digital reminder, like, oh, don't forget, you actually have to do this, and deadlines is helpful. But there's all kinds of stuff that we do. And on Fridays, all of us come from the whole division and get together, and we do things that, like, we look at the software for the whole school. We look at online textbooks. We try to help test the learning management systems. We kind of get a little bit more in the nitty gritty of why we use certain programs. And as a division, we're trying to make sure that every student across Lynchburg City has the same access. So that's kind of been a nice, it's interesting to be part of those conversations. As a teacher, I was not included in those things as much. So it's nice to know the behind the scenes with that educational piece. So there's all kinds of things an ITRT does. With my personal life, my job is from 7:30 till 3. Often I get into school before 7:30, and a lot of times I don't leave school until 3:45. My daughters are 10 and 8, and my older daughter swims a lot. The younger one hates it, but I make her sometimes. But I'll leave school, pick my youngest up off the bus, then drive to the YMCA where my oldest she's at RS Payne. There's a bus that takes her to the Jamerson Y. So I meet her at the Y Monday to Thursday, and she swims for an hour and a half. And I pick her up after school, and she's done it at 5:45 p.m. And currently I was training for a half Ironman. I decided to sign up for another one because, once you've done it, it's just super fun. So what we had been doing up until the COVID crap, I'll call it, what we've been doing up until then was she would swim, and while she was swimming, I'd either be on I have some cycle classes, or I would hop in the water and swim afterwards. And my youngest would go to the kids gym. So she would have something to do when she wasn't occupied. And the oldest swims again from 4:15 to 5:45. Then I would have my class 5:45 to 6:45. Sometimes we're not home till 7:30, and then only to get up and kind of do it again. So
And
this.
we run at 8. I mean, don't leave out that your day is not over yet. We run at 8 p.m., right? I mean,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
so then you have to come home and eat. And then typically, Dr. Sheldon and I do run at 8 o'clock all the time. The fun thing with having COVID is that we can run in the middle of the day because we're at home. Yeah, so we've been running at 4. So I actually have been able to get to sleep a little earlier. But yeah, it's a balance. And what we take Fridays off at our house. Like Dr. Sheldon said, we take Fridays off from running. He does. I just run 2 miles on those days. Those are my minimum runs. A lot of times I'll take one of my dogs, or I'll take a kid, or I'll go real slow. My favorite 2 mile run was I visited my brother, who he spoke to the class earlier this year, Brad, when he was in Singapore. And so when I went to visit him, I ran 2 miles in the Hong Kong airport back and forth in my crazy tights because I couldn't miss a day. So yeah, so Fridays, and we try not to do things on Saturdays. And then there's swim practice on Sundays and stuff. But yeah, it's a lot. But at some point you got to decide what's important. And both my girls know, and my husband and I believe that exercise is our stress relief. And they know if I don't get it, it's not good. And so if you just work all the time, that's not healthy. But if you just exercise all the time, it's not healthy. So finding that balance between doing what you love and enjoy and what's really good for your body, it's, you can find a balance, which is, gosh, that's super important. So.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I do want to just reflect a real quick reflection, you guys. We haven't had a chance to reflect at all, except on your own, which I will ask you to do for Kat, of course. But the speakers that we've heard so far, every single one of them has gone through a pretty significant career change, or a few significant career changes, and that's not everybody. And the next person that we hear next week, she's a little younger and she has not gone through a career change. But anyway, it is interesting, and they seem pretty happy with their career changes. All 4 people who we've heard from so far. So that's certainly not unusual. Anyway, I think unless you have anything else to say, Kat, we should open it up to questions.
Yeah, absolutely. More questions are better.
Any questions at all about the way her day goes or the way her career goes, etc. Jackson.
Hi, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So aside from like the VR goggles and the fun technology, back in grade school I used assistive learning technology that I like it was unusual for me to have an iPad like with the other kids, and I was wondering, is that a part of your department too, or is that another department?
No, that's a great question. We definitely do provide iPads and assistive technology for students. We work with the SPED teachers that, depending on the need of the student, like I will work with even the self-contained adaptive type student all the way up to the Gov school student. So we have plenty that have that we actually have quite a few with iPads. Some that have like the stylus. With Google, being a Google school, like Chromebooks, we have a couple larger Chromebooks. We have extensions that we can add on to their profiles with like Read Write Gold, depending on if they need like a read aloud. I have students with vision issues that they have a larger monitor so that they can actually plug into the monitor so that they can see better, because I mean, I'm 44 and if I don't have my reading glasses on, I can't see a thing. And so there's that, with that technology shift from when I started in 2005 to now, it's so much easier for students to have an accommodation or to have an assistive, have those needs met without feeling like they're different which is, I think is really powerful, because nobody wants to be, especially in high school, nobody wants to stand out. Now, sometimes people do want to stand out and they're like, I want that iPad too. But honestly, we found that most of the things, it's easier to work with a Chromebook than the iPad and the Apple things. But for assistive technologies, that you can't beat some of the apps. So yeah, we definitely deal with a lot of those. We have to jamf the iPads, which means it's a special program to push out just the right thing onto those iPads. Thank you. Oh, she brought me a cookie. Yeah, so that's definitely part of the part of my role, and seeing what works and what doesn't work. We do vet a lot of things for various issues, not just whether or not it's assistive, or whether or not it's something that is appropriate. We with our department, one thing that I think is really unusual, which I had never realized, is people actually read those when you click on a site and it says, oh yeah, I'm going to approve, and there's all that mumbo jumbo, and click at the bottom and go. Like, so our department actually reads those disclaimers, those like, if you do this, and there's a lot of sites that are actually not appropriate for under 13. So since I'm at a high school, like Giphy, or even some Edpuzzle, some of these sites that I take for granted, if you're 8 years old, you're not supposed to access them, because heaven forbid they Google a word or they look up a word that's inappropriate. Sometimes some of those images can be quite shocking. So, and I see, I got off on a long tangent on your question, but we even look at that and have filters and all that kind of stuff in place. You guys might be interested in, we have a set of filters that go to an email. One person checks. So like if kids are talking about self-harm or about doing things they shouldn't be doing with other people and places in the building, those send off flags. And so we have one guy who monitors that every day, and he will actually can shut down. He's stopped fights. He's stopped self-harm issues. He's stopped people selling drugs, doing all kinds of that stuff online. We had one time where there's something called we called it iPod Gate, because there was some serious issues happening and things were being sold via iPads that were the schools. So you learn a lot, and you're able to, it's interesting to know what goes behind the scenes that some of the students might not know.
Jude, question.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could elaborate more on your choice of grad school, because you said that you had looked at Woods Hole, and I actually went on a tour of Woods Hole last November, and I thought it was pretty interesting. So I was wondering what made you choose the school in Hawaii over the other schools.
Yeah. So especially my dad went to MIT, and so Woods Hole's through MIT. So me choosing Hawaii was like sort of scandalous. But I was doing triathlons at the time. I honestly don't even remember what the project was that I would have been working on at Woods Hole. So I went out there, flew into Boston. We went out to the bay there. It was nice going there. I enjoyed it. Like, I could see myself there. The students all seemed to work a lot and all seemed to be pretty stressed out. When I went to Hawaii, the students seemed to work enough and they seemed to be feeling really great about life. So um, it was one of those things where I felt like I think I would have been great if I'd gone to Woods Hole. I'd probably be a PhD and published a gazillion more times over than I am, but I'm not sure I would have been quite as happy. So like, I really, that life balance was super important to me. Having the ability to do triathlons, having the ability to be somewhere beautiful. I felt like if I ever needed to go up to Boston, I could. Going out to Hawaii was pretty amazing. And if you had met me in high school, I would have said, I'm never coming back to Lynchburg. You'll never see me again. Peace out. Bye, guys. Like, I was done. And like, here I am. I've been here since 2000 and love it. I love raising my family here, but it's boring if you're 18. So yeah, part of that decision to go to Hawaii was kind of the feel that the other students gave me. And my advisor, I will say, my advisor I really liked in Hawaii until I told him I was going to quit school to become a professional triathlete. And he told me he should have hired a man instead of a woman because women don't finish things. So that clearly still resonates with me today. But I was like, all right, well, I'm still leaving. So, but it was one of those things that I feel like it's really important when you make those choices to think about your own, what's best for you, and realize that work is not everything. I mean, honestly, the professors in Hawaii that loved it, they would do dawn patrol in the mornings. They would often come in, they would have been surfing for 3 hours, come into work, and then they'd leave and surf again later. Like I felt like it embodied all the things that I want, work and play. But the one thing in Hawaii, it took folks about 10 years to get their PhD. They kind of drug their feet because it was so fun. So like it was, again, it's a balance, but there was nothing wrong with the program as much as the feel that I got. And like University of Washington, I loved it, but I got a cold while I was there. Like, and you know how you have those memories, like a cold is not fun. So Hawaii was easy.
So, just another connection to Randolph College. Kat's dad did teach in the physics department here at one point for a short time, but
Yeah.
he even taught physics here. Okay,
And
anyway,
that's where he met my mom.
wow.
She was a student there.
Totally forgot. Yeah, Kat's mom graduated.
He asked for a list from one of his students. This is so like wrong. He asked for a list of people that weren't in his class of eligible ladies that might want to date. So my mom I think she was second on the list, and he asked the third one out for a date, but she smoked. So he's like, that's nasty, and asked my mom back out on a date. And so, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, Sam, question.
Yeah, I just wanted you to elaborate a little more on, like, 'cause you keep talking about balance and everything. And so I know when you're going full time to try to compete in a triathlon, I mean, how do you find any kind of balance? Is it all like in your 25 to 30, is all you were doing was training, or like where did you find your balance there?
No, that's a good question. If you look up any professional athletes, I will tell you their only hobbies are like reading books and basket weaving. They don't do any standing hobbies. So I was training about 40 hours a week. It wasn't always that many, but it just depended on the week. But you have to, if you ask Dr. Sheldon, I am a sandbagger. I believe it's better to be 20% undertrained than 1% overtrained. So and back when I was a professional triathlete, I took one day off a week. I did nothing. I would sit in my bathtub with a glass of wine and just kick back. One of my sponsors was a massage therapist. I could never afford that, but he did give me massages. Jim McFarland in town, he's muscle therapy. I got massages once a week, and that was key. I'm blessed with good foot mechanics. I don't have flat feet. I hardly ever am injured. Like right now, I actually have an injury. My glute has been bothering me, which is like the first time in, I think, as long as Dr. Sheldon's known me, that I've had any
Never known you
problems.
to be injured. Never.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think it's from sitting down in this chair so much, because when I work at school, I actually stand all day. So that balance was a little different. I taught cycle classes at the Y then some too. And so my balance there was trying to find ways to connect with people. I felt very isolated at times when I was a professional athlete, because I'd have to ride for 5 hours. So sometimes I'd ride by myself, but I tried to meet up with other groups. I definitely didn't feel very academically stimulated during that time, other than like looking into exercise science, into the whole, like, what do I need to eat? What kind of food? And I don't have a strict diet. I eat everything and anything. My dad looks just like me. He's scrawny. I think he was a coxswain up in MIT. So he's the skinny guy who was 110 pounds and, 5'11". So like I eat a ton, but I don't worry about like what I'm eating. But as a professional athlete, I had to think more, okay, I do need more protein. I'm riding for this many hours a day. When you when you're doing that kind of intensity, it's important not to race all the time. I will often ask Dr. Sheldon, like, where's the fire? Why are we like, are you in a hurry? Are you cold? Why are you running so fast? Like, we could go a little slower. So when I would train, I train about a minute slower per mile when I'm running than I race. I very rarely race when I'm practicing, like, when I'm out training, because it's not useful. So I'm kind of one of those heart rate, perceived effort. I often would not even look at my watch for quite a long time while I'm exercising, because if you feel tired, an hour of exercise is the same as if you feel great and you did an hour of exercise but went an extra mile. So I really would try to balance my training by not doing too much, if that's possible when you're doing these Ironmans. I'd also space them out throughout the year. And we really, I mean, my social life, because as an athlete, again, doing that kind of stuff is kind of isolating. It was swimming with the masters. That when I was doing that, I would swim with some old ladies. It was real fun. I would ride with the bike shop guys, and I'd run with the folks at the running store. So, and I didn't have kids. So my balance was more of, am I happy? My husband rides bikes, so we'd ride together. So it was a little different than, and the job didn't pay. It didn't pay enough. It was super fun, and I'm so glad I did it. But it was one of those things that right now, if I was still doing it, I have no idea how I'd be paying for my children to go to school, or being able to afford them doing swim practice. So now I feel, even though teaching, you don't get paid much, I like it, but I can also turn it off when I get home, except for right now, because I'm home all the time.
So, I just want to add from my point of view, I came in at the end of Kat's professional career towards, I always called her semi-pro, because I guess you didn't hold a pro license anymore, but you were still racing sort of professionally.
Yeah.
And you did manage balance between, a job, a family, and a full-time job at the high school, and family and training. And you did manage it, but somebody did, I'm going to skip ahead because Nokomis did just ask, at what point did you decide to have kids? I think that's the biggest point where maybe you backed off a little bit, but it also might have something to do with age.
Yeah, well, and it wasn't about deciding. We didn't have kids for 10 years, and then we did. Like, and the biology behind that. I joke that I ran a real fast marathon and gained 5 pounds, and voila, my body's like, ooh, I don't know if I wasn't able to until then, or my whatever. But so in having kids, I did have to slow down a little bit. And when I turned 30, I didn't have kids, but I still felt like, ooh, I need to do something to have a real job. I need to have a little bit more stability. I can't just play all the time. So my first child was born when I was 35. And so again, I'd been teaching and coaching for 5 years from the high school and the college. And it just seemed a good transition. And if I was still a professional triathlete, it might have been that was actually the time that I would have needed to kind of step out and move into coaching anyway, because now women typically do peak high at older ages than men. So like there are still some pro triathletes that are my age. I'm going to be 45 in May. But most of them are in their upper 30s. For the men, their prime is closer to the early 30s or the upper 20s. And I don't know if that's because they get burned out faster, or what I think some of it is childbirth is not comfortable. It's not fun. But if you can get through that, you can get through anything. So I remember when I was running my 2:58 marathon, I'm like, this is a piece of cake. My labor was 36 hours and it was awful. And I was puking and it was not comfortable. I can get through a sub-3 marathon. So, it puts you in perspective. But I think, you go through those life stages of, from teen to adolescence to young adult, where your vision's different, and different things are important. For my husband and I, coming back to Virginia was important because his family's from Madison Heights. I mean, who knows? You go to Hawaii and meet somebody from Madison Heights, and anyway, but yeah. So I think the kids did slow me down some, but it was also kind of just the right time, and everything seems to have been, as far as I'm concerned, happening. I'm pretty easygoing, so if it didn't happen this way, that would have been fine too.
Haley, question.
Hi. So a question about your work now. You mentioned that you help faculty and students with IT, and I was just wondering what's the most like frequently asked question, I guess, for working
Oh,
with technology.
usually it's how do I do blank? We kind of joke that our job should actually not be ITRT. It should be person that you can just ask a question and they'll Google it for you and find the answer. I think it's there's a lot of similar questions that I think people can find the answer to, but from students, what I get most often is, how do I do this? Or my Chromebook is broken. I send those to the technology. When the kids come and ask me, how do I do this? I say, okay, well, let's figure it out. And I try to show them how they can figure it out themselves. So I have a little bar that they come to. It's a bookshelves and they stand on one side, I'm on the other. I turn the computer and they're like, well, I'm trying to figure out how to do this. And so we try to come up with the solution together. So I feel like, my role is really problem solving. And so they do often have lots of problems, but with IT, it's often, and with the teachers just don't want to learn new things. They just struggle with, I don't know how to do blank. And again, I Google it or I walk them through it and try and help them. Sometimes I think, oh gosh, if you'd only come to the training I did yesterday, you would have know the answer. But yeah, so I'd say the how do I do this is probably the most commonly asked question.
Is there a blank, and how do I do blank? Is there a most common blank? How do I save something to the Google Drive?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's lots of Google related things that they're like, oh yeah. And I think more often they're open-ended where it's what's the best way to do this, or how can I, it's typically like they feel like, it's like when the kids say, oh, I don't understand what you're talking about, or understand what I'm supposed to do. It's there's not a specific, it's just they need someone to just hold their hand and walk them through it and tell them it's going to be okay. We'll figure out how to share that document.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah.
Brandon, question.
Yeah, so you mentioned how you haven't missed a day of running since like January 2014. So given the current world situation, if they decide to increase the stay-at-home orders to be you can't go outside for exercise or anything like that, do you have a backup plan for what you're going to do when stuck in the house?
That's such a good question. So I have two backup plans. One is we actually have a treadmill in the garage that I've been trying to get rid of for a long time and nobody's come to get, so it's still there. So there's one backup. My second is we live at the end of Norfolk Avenue, not the Randolph College side, but the other side, and we have 6.5 acres. One of my favorite things that I own is my GPS. And so what I actually do is when my kids were smaller, I would set them in front of a movie and I would run laps around the house. And so it's like 0.1 miles around the house on this big loop. And so I would do that. And so if they had problems and needed me, they could yell out the window, but I didn't leave them at home. So we've moved on. They're 10 and 8, and I'll actually go on a 40-minute run with them at home, usually watching a movie. But so that I still can get that run in. So yeah, I definitely have a plan if we do have to stay at home. Although I don't know, we might have to Zoom call with Peter to make sure he's actually running too, because I can't let him get fat while while a stay-at-home order is in place.
That's right.
Yeah.
Paige, question.
Okay, there. So I am an environmental science major, and one of the things I like about environmental science is that it kind of combines lots of different kinds of science, so I can do lots of different things. Would you say that's kind of what you liked about environmental science? Because it kind of sounds like that might be kind of what you like about your current job, that you can work with a lot of different people and do a bunch of different tasks.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was in high school, I was at Gov School, and my senior project was on bioremediation and using bio organisms to eat oil spills. And so I kind of have that love for the environment, obviously, but just all aspects of it. And so in trying to pick something fun to do, and like you said, like there's so many ways that environmental science is applicable, that it's one of those no-brainers. Also being a little hippie crunchy. I did it Outward Bound for 50 days before my senior year in high school out in Colorado, and I just love being outside, and I just think it's so important to take care of the natural world, that I felt like with people trying to ruin it, that's also a lot of good job security. You can use it with policy and planning. You could use it with actual science. You could use it just, again, and I felt like for my 12 years teaching earth science too, and I didn't have the advanced kids. I had all co-taught, low level kids who hate science, kids who hate school, kids that want to they don't want to be there. And not all of them, but it was really fun to teach them about recycling and about taking care of the earth and I had this one kid, Raymond, he would come by my class and give me his plastic bottle when he was done drinking his Gatorade or whatever it was, and be like, Miss Phillips, I brought you this so you can recycle it. Like, I think he thought like plastic also was going to make me a bunch of money, like aluminum can make you a tiny bit of money. But I just love that in his brain, I had sparked that interest. So yeah, I absolutely love that there's so many facets of environmental science, but it's also super applicable. I mean, there's just so many ways that you can market it. Like my brother, who was in Singapore doing stuff, and he was environmental policy and planning, but ends up doing a bunch of other things. So it's just it is a good worldview. And honestly, when I went to UVA, I wanted to be pre-med. I was like, oh, I'm going to be pre-med. I'm going to do this. And I met the other pre-med students. Sorry if any of you guys are pre-med, but they were not very nice, and they didn't want to help with homework, and they didn't want to work together. And I'm like, I don't like these people. I didn't want to be that cutthroat, and I felt like in environmental science, again, maybe it's just me in the field, but they all wanted to do really cool things, and were a fun group to hang out with. And so, but they did neat research that I felt like really had a place in our world. So yes to all of that.
So we've got about 3 minutes left. Dr. Schenk, final question.
Was this like Jeopardy? The final question.
Final.
Hi, sorry. It might crash. My tab has crashed like 4 times during this thing.
That's okay.
So this is a little bit unrelated, but it's related to what's going on now. So, and it's also for Peter. So you guys are out running. We've been riding bikes, and people are just not keeping their distance. What's your experience?
Yes, you're exactly right. So there's some people that are still holding their spot on the sidewalk, and they aren't moving. And so I'll be like, Peter, let's go to the road. But my children, 8 and 10, are on bicycles on the sidewalk. And there's a lot of folks that are not stepping out of the way. We're trying to, we do run Rivermont, and there is a bike lane, so we're able to kind of move over. On Peakland Place, also, that's kind of a nice wide space. It's better than the bike path right now. In Roanoke, they closed the greenways because of the issue of so many folks. And honestly, and my 10-year-old said to me, she goes, Mom, if Peter has COVID, we probably are going to have it too, because he gets really sweaty. But even if you're in that 6-foot radius, or you're providing that space, it's hard to not somehow have a drop here or a drop there. So, we're trying to be, and this is, if I felt like there was 5,000 people in the city that had it, and we had that stay-at-home order where it was stay at home, shelter in place, don't go exercise, we would do that, but we're supposed to. But right now, because people are out, we just try to get around them and try to stay out of Peter's little sweat sprinkle.
Yeah, I got to say, I've had this discussion with my wife, Kim, a lot, because Kim still runs in the evening. Kat and I have started running in the afternoon. Kim still runs in the evening. And one of my frustrations is that there's so many people out. It's great that there's so many people out, but there's so many people out. And Kim says when she goes out at 7 or 8 at night that there's no one on the roads, and she's really trying to avoid everybody. So
that's a good tip. That's a good tip.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And that cold, rainy day, there was nobody out on that
Nobody.
cold, rainy day but us. We were out there. So if
We
you
were.
want to pick a day, don't pick a sunny one.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, no, it's an issue, and I think day by day I've been trying harder and harder to stay away from both Kat's kids and the people on the road. But yeah. Anyway, well, thank you so much, Kat.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was fun.
It's 1:58. We got to let people go. Thank you
Yeah.
all for being here. Any
Bye.
last words?
No, I would just say for all of them, just make sure you do what you love. I mean, if you don't do what you love, if you hate your job, life is going to suck. It's a lot of time. You're with your work family more than your home family. So just make sure it's with people you like and you enjoy it. And if you do have a bad boss, you know, it doesn't hurt to look elsewhere. But if you're in a school system, the boss will probably get fired before you will. So just hold tight because there's always a sunrise.
All right. Thank you very much.
All the best. Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. 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 Bye.